This video is brought to you by
Auckland Photographer's Clothing.
Welcome to this XXL landscape photography course for beginners. In the next few hours I will teach you everything you need to know about landscape photography. The right equipment, theory like image composition, visualization and practical examples for photographs with a wow effect. My name is Benjamin Jaworskyj and I've been photographing landscapes now for over a decade. I love it, it's my favorite genre and I want to share with you my techniques and tricks that you can take amazing landscape photos as well. We released a course about 5 years ago, filmed in beautiful Norway, and it's now time for an update. The great thing is, if you buy this course, you will get the whole Norway lessons as well as a bundle for free, so you have double the amount of knowledge. So let's get started with the first lesson. Welcome to this XXL Landscape Photography beginner course. Over the next few hours, I want to teach you everything important you need to know to get started with landscape photography. I've been photographing landscape for over a decade now, and I've been to many amazing places all over the world with my camera. I filmed my first English landscape photography course almost 5 years ago in Norway, and now it's time for an update. The special thing about this course, just like with my photography basics course, is that after around 2 years, this whole course here will be available for free on YouTube. As kind of my legacy for all those who want to realize their passion but may not have the financial resources to buy a full course. Every month there will be one part of a lesson. You can decide for yourself if you want to support our work and buy the full course, watch it immediately and at your own pace of course, or wait for 2 or more years until the whole course here is fully published on YouTube. With a purchase, you also get the classic course from Norway worth $49 for free, which means you benefit twice with the purchase. And I would like to thank you at this point now for your support already. On YouTube also you have to search for the videos and do not always find everything you look for directly because the algorithms filter everything, and here in the course you have everything nicely prepared, sorted and structured for an optimal learning success. Since I myself sell photography accessories such as filters, tripods and clothing through my stores, as well as use certain camera brands and lenses for years, I need to point out now in advance that I cannot be completely objective. And I will always tell you my subjective own opinion and experiences. All products that I use for my work I use for a good reason, and maybe you will also like them. But of course you can apply everything that I say and explain to you to other manufacturers of accessories, cameras and lenses. I would say we start with the first lesson and the first step on your way to fantastic landscape photos. The right camera for landscape photography. First of all, the right camera for everybody does not exist. Currently, I use the A7R5 from Sony with 61 megapixels. But this is a professional camera that costs €4,500 or around $4,000. Also for half of the cost or even less, you can find great full-frame cameras that are absolutely great if you just want to take photos. I've also worked with 24 megapixels, 33, 42 and even 100 megapixels in the past. In the end, it's all about your personal budget and what you want to do with the images. I, as a professional, use high resolution because I use the images in many different ways and also sell them or use them for printing projects. Do you also want to print your photos? Then you should definitely have at least 24 megapixels. Better even a bit more if you want to go a bit bigger. Depending on whether you use full frame or a smaller APS-C sensor or maybe even micro four thirds, the focal length you need will change. More about this in the lens section of this course. Most cameras from Canon, Nikon, Sony and the other big manufacturers are all very good and differ only slightly. Sometimes the one has better video features, sometimes a better autofocus or other display. Purely for photos, relatively little has changed in the recent years. Primarily look for your budget in the beginning and not necessary for the newest tech. For the start, $1,000 to $2,000 you get a really good full-frame camera, and for half the price a good APS-C camera with a smaller sensor. Don't buy the cheapest camera, but also you don't need to overpay for the most expensive stuff in the beginning. Before we continue with this lesson, let's take a quick look at the sponsor of today's video, who's making this lesson available to you for free.
You want to take photos in pouring rain or bitter cold? Easy for me, because of the best jacket system for outdoor photographers. My name is Benjamin Jaworskyj, professional photographer for over 12 years. And this is my signature edition of the Hawkland 7-in-1 Parker Pro jacket set for photographers. When I'm outdoors, I want to focus on what's truly important. I want to feel comfortable, warm, dry, and always be ready to take the photo I have in mind, no matter how bad the weather. One set, 3 jacket layers you can wear in 7 ways, made for professional use. Check it out for your adventures. Now on sale. Discontinued and off-season items up to 60% off at www.hawkland.us.
Hawkland. Photographer's Clothing.
Lenses are usually more important than the camera itself, because they make the actual look. Wide-angle lenses, for example, let you get a lot of landscape on a photo. Telephoto lens let you zoom in so that you have only a small part of a landscape on the picture. Depending on the subject and what you want to achieve, you take one or the other. In the end, your camera only captures what the lens sees. Many lenses of the major manufacturers are very good and usually relatively expensive if bought brand new. But lenses can be bought used as well, because they usually outlast the camera's lifespan. Since you can change the lenses on real cameras, unlike with smartphones, you can buy yourself a new camera and still continue to use your older lenses. Or you can sell a camera one day and a lens on another day, and get a new camera and then a new lens and then maybe a new camera and keep the lens and so on. With the real cameras, you can change the lens from wide angle to telephoto and the other way around. I personally only use 2 lenses most of the time for landscape photos. 90% of the photos I take are made with a 16 to 35mm lens. If you have an APS-C camera, you need about 10 to 20mm lens to achieve the same view, because APS-C cameras have a so-called crop factor due to the smaller sensor size. If I put my 16 to 35mm lens on an APS-C camera, it looks less wide angle than with my full-frame camera, because the sensor is smaller and the image is cropped. To get the same view as I do with my full-frame camera, I need a more wide-angle lens. That's why I say 10 to 20mm. You can use full-frame lenses on APS-C cameras, but the disadvantage is that you don't have the full wide angle. But the advantage? You switch maybe from APS-C to full-frame in some time, you can continue to use the same lens on a different camera. The other way around, you can't use APS-C lenses, especially wide-angle APS-C lenses, on full-frame cameras. The diameter of the lens glass from the back is too small, and you can see actually through the large sensor into the lens. Some full-frame cameras can be digitally converted to APS-C to make this match. But this is only artificial and you have less megapixels because you only use a small part of the sensor. So check what lens you are buying exactly and if it fits your camera sensor size. Again, I use 16 to 35mm lens on a full-frame camera. On APS-C this would be 10 to 20 or 11 to 60 millimeters depending on the manufacturer and the zoom range offered. A lens with this focal length can be used at 60 millimeters full-frame for, let's say, big mountains, or to get distortions in the image like a blown-up foreground. You can also zoom in to 35 if something is further away or you want to compress the image. All in all, a good focal length range for landscape photography. The second lens I use, but maybe only for 10% of my images, including wildlife, is a 70 to 200 millimeter lens. Again, this is related to full-frame cameras. With an APS-C camera, this would be something around 50 to 130 millimeter lens, because you have to take in account the crop factor of the APS-C camera. I use that longer focal length for distant motifs, such as castles or mountain peaks, that I want to stand out from the scene. Not the whole landscape, but only a part of it, as format filling as possible. With lenses, there are some other differences beside the focal length. For example, the maximum open aperture. This means how much light hits the sensor through the lens. This makes sense for low light shots because you can keep the ISO number lower and have more light available. With wide-angle lenses, this is often an aperture of 2.8 instead of 4.0. For example, here, this is a 16 to 35 2.8. And this is a 16 to 35 4.0. The focal length and image you get are identically on both, but the aperture is a bit wider here, 2.8. So I can take better pictures with less light with this lens. But there is also some disadvantage. Number one, those lenses are more expensive. Sometimes even almost twice as expensive with identical focal length. And second, they are larger and heavier, because the larger aperture also requires more space. So you have to think about if you really need it. I use a closed aperture of 8 to 13 for 99.5% of my photos, so I don't need f2.8 all the time. Only in exceptions, like with night photos, I do sometimes need a bit more of open aperture. But that's why I use the 70 to 200mm 4.0 and the 16 to 35mm 4.0 and not the 2.8 most of the times when I shoot landscapes. Both are cheaper to buy, smaller and lighter than the 2.8 siblings. The diameter is also the same on both of those in the front, so I can use the identical filters for both lenses. For me, this is the optimal solution. If I take pictures at night, I use an even completely different lens with even more open aperture. Not like a 2.8, but a 1.4, like the 24mm 1.4. But again, only in these special situations when I really need it. One important point with the diameter and lenses and filters. There are some curved lenses with focal length available below 16mm on full frame, like 40mm or even 12mm on full frame. I'm not a fan of these lenses and usually find them too wide-angled. An image can quickly look cluttered. Mostly these lenses also have a curved lens in the front with a fixed lens hood. So you can only use certain XXL filter systems with very large, expensive and awkward to use and transport filters. I leave the fingers off it, but there are photographers who find this attractive. I would not recommend it for beginners, and I have not been convinced by these extreme wide-angle focal length below 16mm on full frame in all these years I've been photographing now. Last part. Image stabilizers on the lenses. They don't play a big role with modern lenses anymore, as many cameras now use the sensor to stabilize the image. If you mainly shoot with a tripod, you don't need that anyway. Also, for wide-angle lenses, it's not that important or even useful, but good to have with longer lenses like this here. In most modern tele lenses that I know, it's included anyway. And even with very old tele lenses without a stabilizer on the lens, you can now stabilize it with modern cameras using the sensor stabilizer. So I would not overpay for that feature too much if your camera uses sensor stabilization anyway. What filters do you need for landscape photography? And I'm in the filter business for quite some years. Yes, I've got my own signature filters for many years. We tested a lot of things. We went all the way from screw-on filters to magnetic filters, slide-in filters. And I can tell you honestly, the only filters you need for landscape photography are 3 different filters in different strengths. Polarizer, graduated filters, ND filters. Those are the filters I use the most. Not all of the filters I use every day. None of the filters is an everyday filter, like you screw it on and use it for every photo. Every filter has its special field where you use it in. And there are some other filters out there like UV filters. I don't use any UV filter. I never used one in my life, except of when I wanted to smash it for a video, or when I want to make something on it, or maybe for protection when I know that I photograph motocross and maybe a stone will fly on the lens, then I might use an UV filter, but usually not. Because every glass you put in front of your camera is also something that might cause some issues in the photo later. Reflections, or maybe just loss of quality and so on. With those filters, of course, you have that as well, but the better the filters are, the more high quality they are. For example, made of glass instead of plastic, for example, multi-coated, nano-coated, and so on, the less you get it. It's just like in your lens, there are different pieces of glass inside, and yeah, the more expensive it is, usually you can say, the better it is. Then there are astrofilters, and astrofilters you can use for night photography, but honestly I tested it a lot and the difference is little in the photo. Maybe when you have a city glowing, maybe when you have some light pollution from some lamps, you can use it, but in the sky directly I don't see that much of a difference to get such a filter for landscape photography. Only maybe in a special situation where you have a city and you want to photograph city and stars together, or some artificial lights. Then there are some other filters like mist filters. Mist filters are okay to use, but honestly a mist filter I can do like this. I have a mist filter. Very simple, very cost effective. And I can also smear something on my lens, it's a mist filter as well. Some people love mist filters. I personally find it okay. I tested it with some landscape photos, for example with a foggy forest with some stream or something. But again, I can just blow on my lens or make my breath on my lens, and then I have as well some fog. Variable ND filters are okay for landscape photography, but I would not overuse variable ND filters because you don't get the exact number of darkness, and you need that exact number of darkness for calculation when you want to do special long exposures. Variable ND filters are okay to start with, but later I would rather switch to fixed ND filters to combine them better. We use here a variable ND filter for filming. That is very useful, but for landscape photography, I don't find it that useful. Then last but not least, there are some special filters like tinted filters in blue, yellow, magenta maybe. When you buy that on Amazon, a cheap ND filter set, there are usually some colored filters with it. Don't use it. Because when you have the color in your image, you don't get it out in RAW. It's the same like with photographing in JPEG with the wrong white balance. You don't get it that easy out once you have it in. So don't use any tinted filters, only gray filters, like gray ND filters and gray gradient filters. About those specific filters, polarizers, ND filters and gradient filters, I will talk about each extra in one video because there's a lot to tell about those filters. Yeah, those are the most common filters, and I would only use the first 3 for landscape photography. I use them quite often, and many people ask me, can you combine different filters? And the answer is,
Of course you can and you have to combine them because they are different. Each filter has a different use. Maybe you want a longer shutter speed, you take the one filter. Maybe you want to get rid of reflections, you take the other filter. Maybe you want to darken the sky, you take the third filter, and then you can combine them. Of course, you don't have to, but you can. But it's important that the filters are of good quality, that they are made of glass, not of plastic, because otherwise you will have some issues with reflections and as well some issues with tinting. Because the cheaper the filters are made, then usually you get, when you put several filters over each other, some magenta cast in it or some other color cast in it. With real good filters, you don't have any cast, even if you use 3-4 filters over each other. That's it with the filters, and we see us in the next lessons when we talk more in detail about filters.
Did you like this free lesson from my landscape photography course for beginners? Then please click thumbs up. And let me know in the comments if you are already using filters and what kind of difficulties you might have encountered. The complete 3 hours landscape photography course for beginners is now available on my website at www.learnfromben.com. There you can download the full course with 27 lessons and bonus lessons filmed in beautiful Norway immediately. Watch it at your own pace and bring your landscape photography this year onto a new level. Or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, because over the next 2 years there will be a free lesson from this landscape photography course every month on this channel, with sponsored advertisements. So everyone can access my photography knowledge long term, regardless of the budget, and learn about the coolest hobby in the world. So subscribe to the channel now. Every Saturday at 9 AM you get a new video about photography. And if you are brand new with photography, also check out my Simply Learn Photography course or Simply Learn Smartphone Photography course. The playlist links with already released lessons you find in the info box. And if you want to start immediately, go get all my courses, filters and tripod now at www.learnfromben.com. And special offer: if you buy one of my filters or my carbon fiber tripod with a cart value of €100 or $1, you get the full course for free on top. How great is that? My name is Benjamin Jaworskyj, photographer and adventurer. Thank you for watching, and I wish you some amazing photos.